All right, it's time for our next video on the iRacing Dirt refresh, and today we're taking a look at the Dirt Midgets. These were by far my favorite car for a very long time, and after this build, well, let's see if they're my favorite car again. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Thank you very much for joining me as always. And like I said, we're going to be taking a look at the Dirt Midgets. Now, really quick, because I've had some people asking me, hey, what are you doing? Like, what cars are you doing and when? Because I've had a lot of the late model people asking me, hey, when are you doing late models? Late model video will be the next video, okay? I wanted to kind of do some of the open wheel stuff together, then do the late models big blocks together. The non-wing car, will be doing that last, just because most people don't drive that car because they're afraid of it. I mean, like in our league, we love it, but a lot of people just don't. They just don't like that car. It's unfortunate because it's an awesome car. But anyways, so we'll be doing the late models next. But in this video, we're going to be doing the Dirt Midgets. Now, if you remember, one of the things that I used to say all the time was, if there was a Dirt Midget Pro Series, that was the one dirt car that I would really try to like make pro at because I loved it so much. Then we got our first tire update on the Dirt Midget, and if you remember that thing, I said it was a step in the right direction because it was some changes, but overall it kind of sucked, right? Like you could see what they were trying to do, but the car was horrible. You were running like 15 gallons of fuel in qualifying just to get the rear end to hook up. You couldn't give the damn thing gas. It just, you could kind of see what they were trying to figure out and move towards. And with the build that we got after that, which was the one that we just had before this refresh, the car was better. It wasn't as racy in my opinion, but it was better. It once again was a step in the right direction. And one of the main reasons I didn't love it like I used to was because you didn't drive it the way that you would drive a midget. Okay. To me, the best description I've ever heard of a midget was back when I was working on them. And understand, dirt midget racing is what I cut my teeth on in terms of learning dirt cars, right? Aside from outlaw carts, which, they don't have suspension or anything, it's a rigid frame. When I started setting up cars, I had been setting up midgets for a while, right? Before we got into the sprint car stuff. So midgets were what I started with. And I loved them. And the best description I had ever heard of them, someone referred to them as controlled chaos, right? That's what they say. They're like, dirt midget racing is controlled chaos. Now, you can make that argument for kind of, basically all dirt racing. But when you watch a dirt midget, they have a lot of action to them, is what I usually call it, action, where the front end's bouncing, right? It's dancing around. Even if you have a very good handling car, the front end still dances around quite a bit. And you have to be really on throttle with them. Now, that does not mean you're holding it wide open all the time, right? Eldora, yes, okay? But when you go to these tracks like a Kokomo or Fairbury, you're not just flat-footing it around the bottom, you know what I mean? Or just, bouncing off the wall. If you did that in a midget, it would probably end pretty badly, but you were on throttle. And this is something I've talked about really ad nauseum. There's a difference between being on throttle and being wide open the entire lap. There's a huge difference, right? And we talked about with the 410 sprint car, you got to drive with the throttle. That does not mean you pin it to the floor and you bounce your tail tank off the wall, okay? Like, those are two very different things. Same thing with the midget. You've got to be on throttle, but it does not mean that you're just sticking the throttle to the ground and driving it wide open. And what we saw with the last build with the dirt midgets is you weren't really running an actual race line. A lot of times at tracks like we're going to be at here, Fairbury, you were going in, you were kind of sliding up the track and then kind of taking off, and then sliding up the track and taking off. Your motor was bogging down like crazy. You were barely getting to like 8,000 RPMs, and that was the fastest way, right? And it it was just it wasn't very fun. The track, I mean, people talk about the track not slicking off. Now with the midgets, the last build, the thing never slicked off. Like it never slicked off. Like even in our league races, if we had 30 midgets show up and we had multiple heat races and a consi, maybe by the end of the feature it was slick. And that was us doing warm-ups and practice and everything. So the track like never slicked off. Now with these cars, they are so much better. Oh my God, they're so much better. Now, I've only driven them a few minutes, but just after a few minutes, I can tell you now they are way better. They have way more action to them. You have to drive them on throttle. You're not just gonna, go in there, bog it down, do a little diamond line slide up and take off like a rocket ship. Like that's not how you do, and that's not how you should be driving them, right? If we watch a video here of my man, T-Mez, right? Like that guy's on throttle, and this is how you should be driving a dirt midget. You can see in that video, I mean, the dude's just on the throttle. Like he's on throttle, and that's how it should be. And that's how it is now. Okay. So there's some changes to the car in terms of the setup stuff, which is really important because if you remember with these cars, we were doing some things that were really weird. So let's head over to the garage. We'll go through that and then we'll turn a few laps. All right, now I've got the iRacing setup loaded up here for Fairbury. We are at Fairbury. One thing to note is if you are driving these cars and you're not really liking the way that they feel, understand, just like we talked about with the Wing Sprint car, I do think there's some things that might be setup related that are causing you problems, especially if you're using the iRacing setup. One of the things that I've noticed with the iRacing setups, this build, and obviously this will probably change as the stuff is tweaked and updated more, and as even the people who are building the iRacing setups learn more, the setups are very bland. They're almost identical. If you look here at the Fairbury setup, all right, you look at the shocks, you look at the bars, you look at the weight. Obviously, fuel and gear ratio are going to be different. But then if we go to not my setups, let's go to Limaland. Pretty similar, almost identical. How about why do I keep doing that? Let's go to Kokomo. Pretty similar, basically the same, right? Wheel spacing, shocks, the weight. I mean, it's almost the same. You're looking at a different gear, different fuel, and usually different stagger, okay? But if we go to like an Eldora, you can see we've got 5 inches of stagger, but once again, this stuff, basically the same. There's not much difference. I was noticing this in the sprint car setups, the late model setups, a lot of the iRacing setups. There's a lot of similarities. I think they've found a good base, and that's what they're using. Okay. This is good to build from, but if you're someone who like you need the car to kind of fit your driving style more, you might have to play around with this some. I am going to do some videos on how to set all these cars up, kind of the basics to them, because it is different now. But just know that if you're like, man, this thing's doing this or it's doing this, it might be a setup issue. Okay. But anyways, so first and foremost, minimum rear tire pressures, that seems to be gone in terms of, yes, when the track slicks off, if it gets really slick, you might want to take some air pressure out, but the whole running it at the minimum on the rear, because that's the best way to be fast, that's no more. Now, I will tell you this, it is nice if you are on minimum pressures, you can actually hit the gas and turn to the right. It doesn't do that thing where it hops and you have to put it in reverse, and so that's nice. They fixed that, so that's pretty good. But yeah, I don't think you're going to be running minimum pressures in these cars like we were. That does not mean that you won't drop air pressure, because one thing I have noticed in all the testing that I've done, I haven't done a lot of it with the Midget yet, but I have done it with the other cars, is when the track slicks off, taking a pound or two out of the rear tires, or even just one rear tire, right, the right rear, has a big effect. I shouldn't say a big effect, but it has an effect. You can feel and see the difference, and that's always a good thing. You have to think of adjustments in setups as increments, right? It should never be like, hey, we went from an 800 to an 825 right rear bar and the car went from garbage to the best on the track, right? It's never going to be that drastic. Adjustments are not like that, even in real life. Now, if you're changing that rear bar and you also blocked it a different height and added different rounds to it, right? Maybe you added 2 rounds instead of taking out a round, or something along those lines, and you put a new right rear shock on it and changed the right rear wheel spacing. Now you're like, okay, we can go from crap to amazing. But if you're like, oh, we changed the torsion bar, right? That's not going to make a huge difference. It's going to make a change. It's going to make a difference, but it's not going to be, garbage to awesome. And we would see stuff like that sometimes with the setups, where it was like, hey, I was running 8 pounds in the right rear. I dropped it down to 6 and I gained 0.3 of a second per lap. Okay. Like, I don't think we're going to see that anymore with the tires, at least with the current stuff. I could be wrong. Like I said in the sprint car video, it's just right now, my observations, the testing that I've done, I don't think we're going to see that. Another thing, I've heard a lot of people complaining about the cars not turning. You always, when you use iRacing setups, check the steering offset. Okay, we'll talk about it more in the late model video. I've seen the late models have -8 and 10 offset. That means that you have to turn your steering wheel that much more to get the damn thing to turn. So always check this. Okay, this is a comfort thing. This is not a setup thing. Okay, it's just like putting the steering wheel on sideways. So always check this if you don't like it. I hate offset in a lot of stuff. I don't hate it in everything, but I don't like it in a lot of stuff. Midget's one thing, I don't like it. And then everything else, like I said, pretty bland. The gears are all very different now. They seem a little bit closer to what we would run as setup builders. So one thing that we always did as I shouldn't say we, because I don't know what the other places did, but like me, is in terms of SSR, the SSR builders, we were always pretty different with our gears. When I was always doing the midget stuff, I was always a lot taller than the iRacing setup. If iRacing had a 640, right, or a 6, usually they'd have like a 662 here at Fairbury. I was running like a 594. Okay. Now they've got a 554. Now this is a feature setup, so I'm imagining that this is probably pretty tall, but we're going to go out and mess around with it here in just a second. But as you can see, pretty bland vanilla setup. It's kind of something for you to build off of, but this is much more realistic than what we would see, some setups. Like, I saw some setups where people were running, it was absurd, the stuff that they were running, and it would work. I don't think that stuff would work now. So anyways, let's go out, let's turn a few laps with this thing. All right, so I've got Fairbury here. I've got it at I think it's like 30 or 35%. But like, I mean, the car, it's nice, the car actually drives away now. So I'm definitely going to have to be learning and playing around with these setups a whole lot more in the next couple days, because although I can get this thing to turn a little bit better, the car is not sticking on the track the way I would like it to. But regardless, I can feel that, and that's a huge improvement. You got to remember, man, these things, a couple builds ago, the midgets, what I call the original midgets, which is how they were when I first started playing on the sim. They were fun, but it felt like you were just on top of the track at all times, right? They were fun racing, but you never felt like you were in the track. You know, we would do stuff where we would be running like an 800 right rear bar and an 850 left rear bar, right? I'm running 50 thousandths reverse split trying to get that right rear to dig in, and it just wouldn't do it. Now, or I shouldn't say now, but before this build, you could feel the car a little bit more, but like I said, you were doing a bunch of rear crap, right? You're running your tires basically flat. The car just was weird, right? You couldn't pull away from the start finish line. You'd sit there and have to put it in reverse and get it to turn. And, you know, the racing wasn't very good. The track didn't really slick off. You were running these stupid slider line, diamond line. It sucked, man. It just, the racing was not fun with them. Unless you got the track like super slicked off, and it was only getting like that for me in league races. So they just weren't very fun. They're fun again. I love them. They're awesome. They've done an amazing job with them. These things are back to, I shouldn't even say they're my favorite car again, because I really like all the dirt cars, and they're all unique and different in their own aspect, and I think that is huge. I really do. So I know there's a lot of people out there who I did get some comments from people, not on the YouTube, but messages from people being like, dude, I can't believe you like the sprint cars. But I do like them. I talked to my buddy yesterday who he owns and runs sprint cars every weekend. He even said those things in the sim now are so much more like real life than they used to be. He agreed with me on the gearing, that the 410s seemed like the gearing was just a little bit off, but he said overall way more realistic. He said the same thing about the midgets and the other dirt cars. So, and I agree, man. I think they are just way better. They did a really good job with this build. Obviously, I still have a lot more to learn that I got to dig in. I've been doing kind of a car a day. With last night, I was working all night on the late models. Tonight, I'll be working all night on the midgets. So I've been learning more and more and more. But yeah, they feel great, man. I really like them. And hats off. I think iRacing did an awesome job with them. Obviously, things can change, right? I talked about that. We've seen that before. But yeah, I think they did a really good job with the midgets. And I literally cannot wait for the season to start so I can start doing some official racing in these things. All right, you guys, so that's going to do it. Like I said, midgets, a lot of fun, really enjoy them, and I'm really looking forward to racing them. Yeah, you know, it's just fun. They're just fun, man. They're back to what they used to be. You got to really drive them. They're a handful, and that's the way a midget should be. You know, I said this about the 410s, but it's true for the midgets and the late models and everything else. Last I checked, these things are supposed to be hard to drive, right? If this is a sim, which is what all of us want, right? This is a sim that's supposed to simulate real life. You know, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Okay? Everybody would, you know, everybody would be good, I should say, right? Not everybody could do it because it's obviously expensive, but everybody would be good, right? You could go out there and just be like, hey man, I just need a few laps, and I'll build my own car and go out there and run good, and then someone will just throw me in their late model because obviously I'll be good because it's not hard to drive, right? That's not the case. It's very difficult to drive. You know, the midgets are very hard to drive. You know what I mean? You look at guys who drive them like on the USAC level. You know, Logan Seavey or Justin Grant or Thomas Meserol, right? Kyle Larson, right? Like these guys, I personally raced against those guys, whether it was in outlaw karts or when I was working on midgets, and I seen their talent levels. Those guys are insanely good, right? Because these things are hard to drive and you've got to be on throttle. And the sim is trying to give us that, and it seems like now that stuff is a little bit harder to drive, people are like, God, sucks. So these things are going to be hard to drive. It's going to take practice. You're going to have to put in some laps. You're going to have to, you know, really put in effort with these things now, which I like. I mean, it's going to absolutely kill my sleep, but I like it. I'm looking forward to actually putting in work on these things. So, you know, I think it's a big step, and like I said in the sprint car video, you know, I like it. Hats off. It's the same with the midget. I like it. Hats off. So that's not saying it's perfect. That's not saying there isn't things that need to be improved, but when you look at what we had compared to what we have now, huge step in the right direction. So, but that's going to do it, you guys. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. Now, like I said in the last video, got a couple more of these I'll be putting up this week. The late model video will be next. After the late models, we will do the big blocks, and then I'll do the non-wings and the UMPs. And we're going to be looking at mostly the top cars. So like on the late models, we're going to be focusing primarily on the super late model. I will cover the pro, but we'll be looking at the super late model. Same thing with the big blocks. We're going to be looking at the big blocks mostly, not the 358s. We'll cover them, but it's going to primarily be the big block. Okay, so those will be coming in the coming days. Those will be coming in the next few days. Let's try that. That sounds better. But if you want to make sure that you catch those, make sure that you are subscribed down below. Also, if you like the video, hit that like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. All right, like whatever. Just let me know how you feel. Give me a comment down below. And if you want to check out the SSR community and all the other stuff that we got going on, links down in the description below. But that'll do it. Thank you very much as always. Until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing. Take care.